All right, let's get into our costume analysis. This time around, we are looking at the costumes of Smallville. Now, obviously, Smallville, the finale of the 10th and final season of the show had a lot of controversy for fans in regards to Tom Welling not wearing the costume in full. But we're going to go through what we did see. And, obviously, he wore the red jacket and the blue top underneath, which was kind of reflective of the colors. But for the most part, it was these two. It was the trench coat with the S and the black shirt, and then there was the leather jacket with the S on the outside. And so kind of let's have a look at them. We can't look at capes and trunks and belts and things like that, but we can kind of give our analysis. First up, guys, let's go with the red one first. I've got a black version of this leather jacket. It's pretty cool. It's a bit hard to wear because it's very stiff, but especially with the collar and the amount of padding that it has. But the S on this was pretty much the comic book S to a degree, and it was kind of cool. I didn't mind it, but it was obviously just kind of a placeholder in place of him actually having the costume.
I was never a fan of this jacket, and I realized that puts me firmly in the minority in terms of the opinions about this jacket. I just didn't like the color. I didn't like it. It just there's something about it that feels off. Like you said, you have a black version of this. Like I could see like a fan wanting this as like
Yeah.
their leather jacket or their motorcycle jacket or whatever, because that's kind of cool. But it's like the costume, it just feels off. The S looks fine. I just never liked the design.
Yeah, like Mike said, as a fan, it'd be, hey, this is a cool jacket, But seeing Clark Kent, who would eventually become Superman, wearing this as his quote unquote costume, I don't know. I didn't hate it, but it just kind of left me a little cold. It's like, well, what's the point? You can't put him in the costume, and yet you do this with the S on the chest. At least you can go a little farther with it. At least make it some kind of a shirt or something. Not a shirt, but you know what I mean. A
Mm.
top or whatever. But I don't know. And as a fan, I'd love to wear it, but becoming Superman, I don't really like it.
No, I'm with you. I mean, it was a cool look, but it didn't really make a lot of sense story wise for him to be in this. I understood that they needed the red blue blur because he was always wearing red and blue early on in his,
Mm-hmm.
growing up and in those early seasons. And so whenever he would streak past, it would be a red blue blur. And so they went with the red blue kind of motif here, but yeah, I mean, like I said, the S symbol on the and the zipper was never all the way up, so the S was always kind of ripped in half, which is kind of a
Yeah.
little bit weird. But they needed to show the blue underneath, so I got what they were going for. But it didn't really make sense as a costume that you could kind of change into, for the most part. So that was a little bit weird. And then you've got on the other side of things the whole trench coat version, which kind of goes away from the red blue blur motif, but um, the trench coat kind of gives the impression of a cape, with that flowing long thing. But again, it's black, so I don't know what you guys think of this.
Mm.
I actually grew to love this costume, and no one is more surprised about that than me because I remember back in the late '90s and the early 2000s when the production artwork was coming out from Superman Lives, and they had him in like the trench coat, and everyone was like, "Oh, that would be terrible. That would be awful." And then it happens on Smallville, and everyone's like, "This is fantastic." I thought for the time and place that this costume was the costume, that it made perfect sense for what Clark was trying to do. He was still trying to operate as a hero, but he's trying to do it kind of on the down low. So being dressed in black did that. I remember years ago Frank Miller talking about drawing characters from Sin City and how a trench coat is really close to a cape, and it was because you got that sweeping motion. The S symbol looked good. I thought it was a really attractive design, And I was really kind of a. It's actually why I don't like the red jacket, because I was like, well, you had a good costume. Why did you get rid of it? And again, they're evolving the character so the new costume kind of fit with that. But I was bummed out when they went away from this one.
It was his kind of his Batman period. I hate to say that, but no, he was still doing everything secret. He was still the Blur. He wasn't the red and blue Blur. He was still the Blur. But the idea of the trench coat and being having it be like a cape, that was the idea I think I liked the most of this. Did it have to be black? It didn't. It didn't have to be. I mean, he was the red blue Blur. I mean, to put on a darker suit to be some to hide even more. I don't know, but the point is, I liked the trench coat. I like the idea it could be like a cape. I like that he was also it kind of represented also what he was sort of going through at the time, still finding his identity and all of that. So I certainly like this a lot better than the red jacket.
It was just an interesting choice with the S having that kind of like a smoke motif to it. Like it was it wasn't a solid S. It was kind of as if it was powdered on in some way. But interesting choice. I didn't mind the look either myself. It could add a bit more color to it, but I understood, as you said, it kind of reflects what he was going through at the time. So that made sense. But then we get to the actual costume that was presented to him and that he supposedly ended up wearing at the very end. And this was, for all intents and purposes, the Superman Returns costume.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I always looked at that and went, they didn't want to build a new costume, so they just got this one out of storage, which is fine. The point of Smallville, which I eventually came to just accept, I was just like, well, this is what it is, so trying to complain about it in any other way just is kind of useless. But the point of Smallville wasn't to show him in costume. The fact that they did as halfway as they did is only disappointing, because it's like, well, if you're going to do it, go ahead and do it. But on the other hand, if you're going to just have that as a prop, then and it's never going to be anything that Tom Welling is going to wear, then yeah, it works just as well. And considering that in Superman media, in the adaptations that we had, that at the same time you did have Superman Returns and you did have this show, it makes perfect sense that that would be the costume you would go with, because there wasn't another one. I am something that just occurred to me, and we can discuss this after we get Mark's opinions on it. Just as a question to throw out there is, do you think if the New 52 had happened earlier, if they would have put Clark in the T-shirt costume? But that's a question for after we talk about this part. So I just wanted to get it out there before I forgot.
You know what? I wasn't thrilled when I saw they wanted to use this suit because, as if you remember several weeks back, I am not a fan of the Superman Returns costume. I get at the time, I mean, I forget when what season did they actually introduce? Did they introduce this in the 10th season, or did they show this a little earlier?
I think it was in the 10th.
Yeah.
Because it was basically, if I'm remembering it correctly, Jor-El gave it to him and then took it away.
Right.
Like, obviously, you're not ready for it. So it was like the 9th or 10th season.
Because, I mean, Superman Returns was 2006, and unfortunately it wasn't a huge smash, so I was just wondering, why they would go with that look. I mean, as you can see in the end, his S is a little different. It's a little more traditional, when he rips his shirt. So I just wonder why they went, they could have gone a little more, I don't want to say a little more Christopher Reeve, but I guess I mean a little more Christopher Reeve with the suit. They didn't have to do Superman Returns, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, again, it's the suit they had. It was, he wasn't going to be wearing it, so it didn't really matter. And again, here with, when he rips open his shirt, the S is a bigger S, and I like that much better.
Yeah, so interesting choice. Obviously, they had it on hand, so that's what they used, and that was what was being used at the time. But yeah, it was an interesting decision. To your question, Michael, you know, if they had come up with the concept of Superman in t-shirt and jeans and boots from the New 52 before Smallville had ended, they may have gone down that way, and it wouldn't have been a bad stylistic choice. I don't know, but that could have been interesting. I would have preferred that over some of the Blur costumes we got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think they would have done the cape, but you know, at the very least, having like the kind of the t-shirt look might have worked a little better. Maybe with the red jacket, as was his uniform for most of the series. Though
Yeah.
it was funny. There was a bit of a minor hubbub about the fact that when Homelander, in a recent episode of The Boys, went kind of incognito, he was in a red jacket and a blue shirt, and it looked very Smallville-ish. I don't know if that was on purpose, but knowing that show, it could have been.
Could have been, indeed. Mark, what do you think? Would you have liked to have seen the New 52, like early Action Comics Morrison style costume?
Sure. I mean, it wouldn't be any worse than the red jacket and then the black trench coat with that little powdered S on there. I mean, so he'd be wearing a blue shirt with a more traditional S, and he'd be wearing his jeans, which he was already wearing in those other costumes, I believe. So yeah, sure, I would have been with the boots. That would have been, no cape, obviously, maybe in a red trench coat. I don't know, but yeah, no, I think that would be great.
Okay, so overall, I mean, then Tom Welling had the look. I mean, he was, very much the archetype of what we were looking for at the time for a young Clark Kent. And as he grew, he just became more and more Superman-esque. And there were so many people calling for him to be the next Superman at the time and all that kind of thing. And we know that he, never really wanted to wear the costume. That's why the no tights, no flights thing was kind of in place from the very beginning. He didn't want to be typecast, even though he probably has become so many years later, and he's embraced that. He does all these Smallville podcasts and things with Michael Rosenbaum and the Smallville Nights and all those convention appearances that he does, and so he's kind of embraced that. He has that persona about him, but he very much was a fan of his look. But overall, looking at both these costumes, it's about a 5 out of 10 for me. A for effort, but it doesn't really go where we needed it to go.
Yep. I'll give the trench coat an 8 and the red jacket a 5.
I'll combine it and I'll give the whole thing a 6.
Very cool. All right, so that is our analysis of this costumes from Smallville. So we will push on and look at some of the variant costumes from Superman and Lois next time around, and some of the crossovers. We'll do that next week.